All right, here's something a little bit more challenging, and it's actually going to get us thinking about algebra, which is what we're going to do a little bit later in the year, but this will be a little bit of a preview of algebra, okay? You sometimes will get to something, and this is 4.4, this is part 2, where in 4.4 part 1, we found the percent of a whole number. But now we want to find the whole number when we know the percent of it. Confusing. Huh. Okay, so we are finding the whole of a number. So here's what it looks like. Say we want 50% of what number is 48. So I'm going to take this and put it into like a little problem like 4 plus 2 equals 6. Put it like that. Okay, so 50% of is times, and I'm going to just use a dot for that, because in algebra you always use a dot. And then what number? That's what I don't know. So that's my question mark, is equals 48. This is kind of strange. We got to do 50% times something to get us to 48. Now, I suppose we could just guess and check until we get it, but I'm going to give you a little method, and it's an algebraic method on how to get the answer. So what you want is you want this. You want to get that all by itself. So if I have a problem like, 2 equals 2. Say 2 equals 2. Does 2 equals 2? Of course it does. Now, if I do plus 5 to the same thing, if I do plus 5 to each side, so you have your equals right here, and you have two sides. It's like a balance. I want to keep it balanced. I want to keep it equal. If I do 5 to this 2, it's going to get me 7, and 5 to that 2 is going to get me 7. So 2 plus 2 is balanced. Is 7 plus 7 balanced? Yeah. So you're still balanced. So the equal works here and the equal works here. All I did was the same thing to each side. And that's what you can do, okay? So here, if I want this to be all alone, I need to get rid of that 50%. And so I'm going to lose the 50% over here, but I have to lose 50% over here. So I got to do the opposite. It's 50% times this number. So I'm going to do the opposite of that. I'm going to do 50% divided by 50%. Now, let's change that into a decimal. It'll be so much easier, okay? 50% is 0.5. And when I do 0.5 divided by 0.5, because right now it's times, so I have to do the opposite to get rid of it. If it's multiplied, then I have to divide it to get rid of it. So 0.5 divided by 0.5, if you do that on your calculator, you're going to get the answer 1. Okay? And 1 times that is always that, so you don't really need that 1, because it's the same as what it is. 1 times anything is always what it is. So, but if I do divided by 0.5 over here, I got to do divided by 0.5 over here. These things eliminate. So I have my question mark equals 48 divided by 0.5. And let's try that. 48 divided by 0.5 equals 96. 96. So I think my question mark is 96. Here's what I think it is. 50% of 96 equals or is 48. Now, in 4.4 part 1, we solved these kind of problems. 50% of what number? 50% of 96 is what number? Okay, so we make that into a decimal, times 96. 0.5 times 96 is 48. So it works. So this right here is 96. Okay, I'm sure you're a little confused, but this is a good little introduction to algebra, but it's also a good way to solve these problems. When you have something where you have something on this side and it equals, and you know what it equals, but there's a question mark in the middle, this is how you do it, okay? So 62% times my big question mark is 31. So now I'm going to change this to a decimal. 0.62 times my question mark equals 31. Now it's times this number, so I got to do the opposite of times. I have to divide it. Divide that by 0.62. Divide that by 0.62. And let's see what we get. 31 divided by 0.62 equals 50. 50 equals my question mark. Let's put it in here. Let's see if it works. Is my number 50? So 62%, which is 0.62, 0.62 times 50 equals 31. Okay? Now you might not fully understand why you do this. When we get into algebra, you'll understand more why we do it. I just want you on this one to know the system. If you get to a question that says 5% of what number equals 10, okay? This will be our last one we do. So 5% of question mark equals 10. So that is times, or I'm just going to use a dot for multiplication. In algebra, this is actually called a variable, and a variable is a letter instead of a number. So I'm going to say this is n. I just don't know what n is. It's some number, I don't know what it is. So 5% times n equals 10. Now I got to do the opposite to get n all by itself. Instead of times 5%, I divide it by 5%. But again, I want to make this into a decimal. And 5%, we know our chart, you move it over to 0.05. So 0.05 times n equals 10. I want to get this wrong, get rid of this part here. So instead of times 0.5, I'm going to divide it by 0.05 and divide this by 0.05. These two things become 1 and eliminate. Then I bring down my n equals 10 divided by 0.05. Let's see what we get. 10 divided by 0.05 equals 200. Whew. It's a big number. Now, I do want to check that out, because if I think 5% times, I'm going to use my dot, 5% times n, which I think is 200, equals this 10. So this is 0.05 times 200. Now when I do on my calculator, if I do 0.05 times 200 and I get 10, then I've answered this question correctly. Let's try it. 0.05 times 200 equals 10. Okay. So that's correct. So you just change this to a percent, or to a decimal, percent to a decimal, times n, your question mark, your variable, you're not sure what that is, equals, you got what you want, 10. So then you just got to get rid of this part by doing the opposite to both sides. Keep it in balance, and then you find out what your number is. And then always put it back in just to check it. Okay? This is a very new concept for you, and we are going to do a lot of it. This year, this was just an introduction. And in class, we will do a lot more of this. So stay tuned, and hopefully you'll start to understand how you finding the whole of a number. Okay?